Hey, boys and girls. Tonight we're going to work on finding percents. We need to know what a percent is before we start. So a percent is a rate per 100 or a rate out of every 100%. That's why when you get 100% on your test, it's a perfect score because it's out of 100 points. When we talk about percents, we're going to talk about percents, parts, and wholes. A percent is essentially a ratio. The part being how much there is, the whole is always the percent is always out of 100, but the whole might be out of something that's not 100. So we're going to look at how to find all of these different parts, the percent, the part, and the whole, given two of the values. So to start this off with, we have to memorize what I call the percent triangle. Please make sure that you are taking these notes in your math notebook with me as I go along. So because we're talking about three different values, we'll use a triangle to represent the three different values. At the top of the triangle, you have the part. So P represents the part. In the bottom left, we have the whole. Again, sometimes the whole might not be out of 100, therefore finding the percent is going to be difficult. Percents are always out of 100. Percents can also be represented as decimal numbers that represents a percent in a problem. Because we can never do a math operation with a percent. Anytime that you need to apply a math operation to a percent, you have to change it into a decimal. And you do so by dividing it by 100. So 100% would be equal to one whole. Because when you take 100 and divide it by 100, you get what? Let's say you had a 90%. As a decimal, if you needed to multiply it with another number or divide it with another number, it would be 9/10 or 0.9. So now that we know which of these three values goes in which part of the triangle, we need to apply some operations to it. So over on both the sides, we are going to have division. And then over along this bottom line, we are going to have multiplication. So knowing that on the sides of the triangle you have division and the bottom you've got multiplication, if you are given two of the values inside this percent triangle, you can find the third value. And we're going to try that right now. Anytime I'm going to start a percent problem, I am always going to write my percent triangle up in the corner. I know that from side to side we have divide, and down at the bottom we have multiply. So I want to know 25% of a certain number is 16. What is that number? You might be reading and listening to this problem and thinking, I have no idea, and I have no idea how to find it. But if you've memorized this percent triangle, it's going to be very easy to solve. You're going to plug in your values in the percent triangle. So using my percent triangle, I know my percent is 25%. I know that 25% of a certain number is 16. So 16 is equal to 25%. Therefore, 16 is my part. So it goes up in the top of the triangle, meaning I am trying to find my whole. Since I am given these two values, my part and my percent, I'm going to go down the triangle In order to solve for my whole, I know that going down the triangle means I need to divide. Now remember, whenever you divide, always start at the top. At the top, meaning at the part. Oops. At the top. Started writing part because I was saying it. Always start at the top when dividing. Meaning 16 is my dividend. So I'm going to take 16 and I'm going to divide it by 25%. But remember, I can never do an operation with a percent. So I'm going to convert that into a decimal by dividing by 100. Therefore, I now have 25 hundredths. So my new problem is 16 divided by 25 hundredths. So 16 is my dividend. It goes inside the house. 25 hundredths is my divisor. It goes outside my house. I can never have a decimal in my divisor, so I move my decimal over 2 places. Therefore, I have to move my decimal over 2 places in my dividend. Even though there was no decimal written in my number 16, there's always a decimal at the end of every whole number. And now I can go ahead and start dividing. 25 can't go into 1, can't go into 6, but it can go into 166 times. That equals 150. I can subtract and get 10 left over. Bring down my next place value. I know that 25 goes into 100 4 times. 4 times 25 is 100. Subtract, I get a remainder of 0. Therefore, my whole in this situation is 64. So it might mean that you had 64 points on a test. You scored 16 of those points, so you scored a 25% on that assignment. Now we're going to do another example where we're actually going to find the percent given the part and the whole. So anytime I have this, I'm starting with my percent triangle. I have my part, my whole, my percent. I know that going down these 2 lines right here is going to mean division, and down here at the bottom, I've got multiplication. So let's say my question is, what percent of 125 is 85? What percent of 125 is 85? So I know I'm going to be looking for my percent. That's what I'm going to be searching for. I know that it says of 125. Therefore, 125 represents my whole. So 85 is going to be my part. So using my triangle, I'm going to fill in what I know. And I know I'm looking for what percent that is. So I know that going down my triangle, I need to divide. I know that my part up top is always going to be my dividend. So I'm going to take 85 and I'm going to divide it by 125. When I do that, 85 goes inside the house. I'm dividing it by 125. 125 does not go into 8 and does not go into 5. So I'm going to put a decimal, meaning my decimal goes right above there in my quotient, and I'm going to add a place value. I'm going to add a tenths place. Having 0 tenths place and writing it did not change the value of my number. But now 125 can go into 850 6 times. 6 times 125 is 750. I have a remainder, not of 0, I'm so sorry, of 100. But I can add another place value, and I can bring it down to make it 1,000. And I can keep dividing because it goes into that evenly. 125 goes into 1,000 8 times. Therefore, I can subtract 1,000, and now I have my final answer of 68 hundredths. Well, right now it looks like we don't have a percent. I have a decimal. So to make it a percent, I can now multiply it by 100, which equals 68. Therefore, my final answer What percent of 125 is 85? Is 68%. We're going to try one more problem with this today, and just to review, I'm always going to write down my triangle, my part, my whole, my percent, both of the sides. I'm going to be dividing. My bottom line, I'm going to be multiplying. And now what we're going to do is we're going to find the part given the whole and the percent. So I might have the question, what is 38% of 25? So I've got my 38%. I can start filling in my triangle with what I know. What is 38% of 25? Therefore, 25 represents my whole, and I am trying to find the part. Remember that this bottom line tells me to multiply. So I need to multiply 25 times 38%. Before I apply an operation to a percent, I have to divide it by 100 to change it into a decimal. So now I have 38 hundredths. So now in order to find the whole, I want to multiply 25 times 38 hundredths. When I do that, 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 2 is 16 plus 4 is 20. Placeholder, cross out what I've used. 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times 2 is 6 plus 1 is 7. 0, 5, 7, 8, 9. So my answer is 950, but it's not because I have a decimal. So I need to count my digits after the decimal, or remember your dad. You've got 2 digits after the decimal in your problem. Therefore, you need 2 digits after the decimal in your product. So my part in this case is going to be 9 5/10. So that's my part. That's 38% of the whole 25. This might sound very difficult, but as long as you memorize this triangle for our percents, it's going to be much, much easier for you. Make sure that you practice. We've done 3 practice problems. The more you practice doing this process, the easier it'll be.